The dust devils danced across the corral fence like spirits that morning when Yates Bradford first saw Olivia Anderson whisper a wild Mustang into submission with nothing but her bare hands and a voice soft as rain on desert sand. He had been riding fence line for the Diamond T Ranch for 3 years now, had seen plenty of horsebreakers work their trade with ropes and force and stubborn will, but never anything like this. The woman stood in the center of the pen, her auburn hair pulled back in a practical braid, wearing a simple cotton dress the color of sage, and the stallion that had thrown two experienced wranglers just yesterday was pressing his muzzle into her palm like a lamb seeking comfort. Yates sat frozen on his own mount, watching from beyond the rails as she ran her fingers along the animal's neck, speaking words he could not hear, but whose effect he could plainly see. The horse's eyes, which had rolled white with fear and fury hours before, now showed calm and something approaching trust. Monticello, Utah in the spring of 1887, was a town still finding its footing in the high desert country, a place where Mormon settlers had carved out an existence alongside cattlemen, prospectors, and the occasional drifter looking for work or trouble or both. Yates had arrived with the latter category 3 years past, running from a father's expectations in Virginia and a future that felt like a noose tightening around his neck. He had found work and kept his head down and tried to ignore the restlessness that still plagued him in the dark hours before dawn. At 26, he figured he should have settled into his skin by now, should have found some measure of peace in the simple rhythms of ranch work. Instead, he felt like that Mustang had looked yesterday, wild and afraid and fighting against something he could not name. The woman stepped back from the horse now, and the animal followed her, not led by rope or bridle, but by something else entirely. Yates dismounted and approached the corral, his boots crunching in the red dirt. She turned at the sound, and he got his first clear look at her face. She was perhaps 23 or 24, with eyes the color of honey and a spattering of freckles across her nose. There was nothing delicate about her despite her slim build. She looked like she belonged to this country, carved from the same stone as the red rocks that rose in formations beyond the town. "You work for Thomas?" she asked, her voice carrying easily across the space between them. Thomas Garrett owned the Diamond T, a sprawling operation that ran cattle across thousands of acres of grazing land. "I do," Yates said, leaning against the fence rail. "Been watching you work. Never seen anything like it." She brushed dust from her skirt. "Most people have not. They prefer the old ways. Breaking instead of gentling." "There is a difference. All the difference in the world." She walked toward him, the Mustang trailing behind her like a dog. "Breaking means you take the spirit out until nothing is left but obedience. Gentling means you build trust until cooperation becomes natural. One creates a tool, the other creates a partner." Yates studied the horse, then looked back at her. "How did you learn it?" "My father." Something flickered in her expression, there and gone like a cloud passing over the sun. He had a way with animals. Could calm a spooked cow, call birds down from the trees, make wild things trust him. He taught me before he died. "I am sorry for your loss." She shrugged, but he could see the weight behind the gesture. "It was 2 years ago. I have been working on my own since then, hiring out to ranches that need horses trained or livestock settled. Most think I am peculiar, but they cannot argue with results." "Thomas Garrett hired you?" "For 3 weeks. He has 6 horses that need training for ranch work, and a bull that keeps breaking through fences. I start with the bull this afternoon." She extended her hand over the fence rail. "Olivia Anderson." He took her hand, surprised by the calluses on her palm, the strength in her grip. "Yates Bradford. Most people call me Yates." "Well, Yates Bradford, if you are not too busy with fence line, you could help me move this one to the pasture. He is ready to be with the others now." That was how it started, with a simple request and an afternoon spent watching her work. Yates found reasons to be near the corrals over the following days, telling himself he was just curious about her methods, that it had nothing to do with the way sunlight caught in her hair or the quiet confidence in everything she did. He watched her gentle 3 more horses, each one responding to her touch and voice with an eagerness that seemed almost magical. But there was no magic to it, he realized. Just patience and understanding, and an ability to see past fear to the creature underneath. The bull proved more challenging. It was a massive Hereford with a mean streak earned from rough handling, and when Olivia entered the pen, where it was kept separate from the herd, Yates felt his heart climb into his throat. She carried no weapon, no goad, nothing but a bucket of grain and that same steady calm she brought to everything. "This is foolish," he called from his position outside the fence. "That animal could kill you." "He could," she agreed, not looking away from the bull, which had lowered its head and was pawing the ground. "But he will not. Not if I do this right." "And if you do it wrong?" "Then I suppose you should fetch the doctor." She moved slowly, angling sideways so she was not approaching head-on, speaking in that low, melodic voice. The bull snorted and stamped, but did not charge. Minutes stretched like hours as she inched closer, still talking, still moving with that fluid grace. Finally, she was near enough to pour grain into the trough. The bull watched her, its small eyes suspicious, then hunger won over fear, and it moved to eat. Olivia stayed perfectly still, letting it become accustomed to her presence. Then slowly, carefully, she reached out and touched its shoulder. Yates released a breath he had not known he was holding. Over the next hour, she repeated the process, building trust through repetition and reward, until she was running her hands along the bull's neck while it ate peacefully. When she finally emerged from the pen, he saw that she was trembling slightly. "You were afraid," he said. "Of course I was afraid. Only a fool would not be afraid." She wiped sweat from her forehead. "But fear does not mean you cannot do something. It just means you have to be more careful." He walked with her back toward the main ranch house, where she had been given a room in the workers' quarters. The sun was setting, painting the desert in shades of crimson and gold, and the evening air carried the scent of sage and dust. "Why do you do this?" he asked. "Surely there are safer ways to make a living." She was quiet for a long moment. "After my father died, I had nothing. No family, no inheritance, no skills that anyone valued. But I had this gift he gave me, this understanding of animals. It was the only thing that made me feel close to him, the only thing I was good at. So I decided to make it my trade. Consequences be damned." "You have no one? No family at all?" "An aunt in California who made it clear I was not welcome. A cousin in Denver who wanted me to work in his shop, sewing all day in a dark room. I tried it for 3 months and nearly went mad." She stopped walking and turned to face him, and in the fading light, her eyes seemed to glow. "What about you? Yates Bradford? What brought a man with a Virginia accent and educated speech to cowboy work in southern Utah?" He had not expected the question to land so squarely, had not realized how much of himself he revealed just in his voice. "Same as you, I suppose. Running from one life, looking for another." "Did you find it?" "I am still looking." They stood there in the gathering darkness, and something passed between them, in understanding or recognition, or maybe just the acknowledgement that they were both adrift in their own ways. Yates felt something shift in his chest, a loosening of the tight knot he had carried for so long. This woman who could gentle wild animals with patience and trust, she was showing him something about himself he had been afraid to see. Over the next week, he found himself drawn to her constantly, making excuses to be wherever she was working, offering help she did not need but accepted anyway. They fell into an easy companionship, talking as they worked, sharing stories of their pasts in small increments. He learned that her father had been a veterinarian in Illinois, that her mother had died when she was young, that she had always felt more comfortable with animals than people. She learned that he had been expected to take over his father's law practice, that he had felt suffocated by that future, that he had left in the night with nothing but a horse and $100 and had not written home since. "Do you regret it?" she asked one afternoon as they mended a section of fence together. "Leaving everything behind?" He hammered in a nail, considering. "I regret the pain I caused. My mother especially. But the leaving itself? No. I would have withered there, become something hollow." He looked at her. "Do you ever wish you had accepted your cousin's offer? A safe, respectable life? Every time I nearly get trampled by a bull," she said, and then laughed at his expression. "I am joking, mostly. No, I do not wish for that life. I would rather have uncertainty and freedom than security and misery. We are a pair, are we not? Both choosing the hard road. Perhaps that is why I feel comfortable with you." She held a board steady while he nailed it in place. "Most men look at me like I am strange, something to be pitied or scorned. You just look at me like I am a person. You are the least pitiable person I have ever met," he said honestly. "Watching you work, seeing how you understand these animals, it is remarkable. You have a gift." She flushed, ducking her head. "My father used to say that. He said some people are born with a connection to living things, an empathy that goes beyond words. He said it was precious, and I should never waste it. He sounds like he was a good man. He was the best man I ever knew." Her voice went soft. "When he died from pneumonia, I felt like the world had lost something irreplaceable. He would doctor sick animals for free if the family could not pay, would spend hours trying to save a bird with a broken wing. He taught me that all life has value, that gentleness is not weakness, but strength." Yates set down his hammer. "I think he would be proud of what you have become." She looked up at him with eyes bright with unshed tears. "Thank you. That means more than you know." They finished the fence in comfortable silence, but Yates felt the air between them charged with something new, something he was not quite ready to name. He had been alone for a long time, keeping people at arm's length because it seemed safer than letting anyone close. But Olivia was slipping past his defenses without even trying, just by being wholly herself, by showing him that strength could be gentle and vulnerability could be brave. That night, there was a dance in town, a social gathering at the community hall that most of the ranch hands attended. Yates normally avoided such events, uncomfortable with the forced merriment and small talk, but when he heard that Olivia was going, he found himself cleaning up and riding into Monticello alongside the other workers. The hall was crowded and warm, lit by lanterns, and filled with the sound of a fiddle and guitar. He spotted Olivia almost immediately, wearing a dress of deep blue that he had not seen before, her hair loosened from its usual braid and falling in waves past her shoulders. She was surrounded by a group of local men, all vying for her attention, and Yates felt an unfamiliar surge of jealousy rise in his chest. He pushed it down and made his way to the refreshment table, pouring himself a cup of punch and trying not to watch her. But his eyes kept drifting back, noting the way she smiled politely, but seemed uncomfortable with the attention, the way she kept glancing toward the door, as if planning an escape. "You should ask her to dance," said a voice beside him. He turned to find Sarah Garrett, Thomas's daughter, a sharp-eyed woman in her 30s who helped run the ranch alongside her father. Instead of standing here glowering like a thundercloud, "I was not glowering. You absolutely were." She took a sip of her own punch. "Olivia is a good woman. Unusual, but good, and she looks at you the same way you look at her, when you both think no one is watching." Yates felt heat rise in his face. "I do not know what you mean." "Of course you do not." Sarah patted his arm. "Men are always the last to see what is right in front of them. Go dance with her before one of those fools convinces her to step outside for some air and bothers her with unwanted proposals." Thus prodded, Yates crossed the room and politely interrupted the group surrounding Olivia. "Miss Anderson, would you care to dance?" The relief in her eyes was unmistakable. I would be delighted, Mr. Bradford. He led her onto the floor as the musicians began a waltz, placing one hand at her waist and taking her other hand in his. They began to move, and he was surprised to find that she was a good dancer, following his lead effortlessly. Thank you for the rescue, she said quietly. I was about to claim a sudden headache. They were bothering you? Not bothering exactly, just not listening. I made it clear I was not interested in courtship, but they seemed to think I was being coy. She shook her head. Why do men so often hear what they want instead of what a woman actually says? Poor upbringing and excessive pride, Yates suggested, and was rewarded with her laugh. They danced two more songs, then stepped outside for genuine air, the night, cool and clear, above them. The stars were brilliant this far from any city, scattered across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. They walked away from the hall, letting the music fade behind them until they reached a small park area with benches beneath cottonwood trees. I have been thinking, Olivia said, settling onto a bench. My time here is almost up. Another few days, and all the horses will be trained. The bull settled. I will need to move on to the next job. Something cold settled in Yates's stomach. Where will you go? There is a ranch near Blanding that needs help with their horses. After that, possibly Colorado. I go where the work takes me. She looked up at him. What about you? Will you stay with the diamond tea? He sat beside her, suddenly aware of how close they were, how he could see the pulse beating in her throat. I do not know. I have been restless lately. More than usual. What do you think would settle you? It was a dangerous question, one that invited honesty he was not sure he should give. But sitting there under the stars with this remarkable woman, Yates found he could not dissemble. I think I have been wild in my own way, running from expectations, from commitment, from anything that might tie me down or demand I be something I was not sure I could be. I thought that was freedom, but lately it just feels like fear. Olivia was quiet, studying him with those clear eyes. What changed? I watched you gentle that Mustang, he said simply. Watched you build trust instead of breaking will. And I realized that what I have been fighting against all this time was not the idea of settling down or building a life. It was the fear that I would lose myself in the process, that I would become someone I did not recognize. He took a breath. But you have shown me that does not have to be true, that you can be gentle without being weak, that you can build connections without losing who you are, that maybe being wild is not about running. Maybe it is about choosing honestly, living authentically, even if that looks different from what everyone expects. She reached over and took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. Yates Bradford, are you saying I have gentled you? He looked at their joined hands, then back at her face. I am saying you have made me want to try, made me think that maybe I could build something real instead of just drifting. He hesitated, then plunged forward. Come with me, or let me come with you. Whichever direction we go, let us go together. Her breath caught. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you are brave and skilled and kind. I know you make me want to be better than I have been. I know that when I think about you leaving, I feel like something vital is being torn away. He turned fully toward her. Olivia, I am not asking for promises or guarantees. I am just asking for a chance to see if this feeling between us is real, to find out if we could build something together. She looked at him for a long moment, and he could see her thinking, weighing, considering. Then slowly she smiled. I have a confession. I have been making excuses to extend my time here, finding extra work that did not strictly need doing, telling myself it was because the job was not finished, when really it was because I was not ready to leave you. Relief and joy flooded through him. So is that a yes? It is a yes to trying, she said, to seeing where this path leads us. I still need to take the job in Blanding. I gave my word. But after that, we could travel together. I could teach you what I know about animal handling, and we could hire out as a team. There is always work for people who can train horses and settle livestock. I would like that, he said. And then, because words seemed insufficient, he leaned forward and kissed her. She responded immediately, her free hand coming up to cup his cheek, and the kiss deepened into something that spoke of longing and hope and new beginnings. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. We should probably return to the dance before someone comes looking, Olivia said, though she made no move to stand. Probably, Yates agreed, equally still. They sat there for several more minutes, hands entwined, shoulders touching, looking up at the stars and the vast night sky. Yates felt something settle in his chest, a rightness he had never experienced before. This woman who could gentle wild things had somehow gentled him, not by breaking his spirit, but by showing him that trust and connection did not have to mean captivity, that he could be himself and still belong to something bigger than his own restless wandering. The next few days passed in a blur of work and stolen moments together. Yates helped Olivia finish training the last of the horses, learning her methods and marveling at her patience. She showed him how to read an animal's body language, how to sense fear or aggression before it manifested, how to use voice and touch to calm instead of intimidate. He proved an apt student, discovering that he had more natural ability than he had realized. The horses responded to him, not with the immediate trust they gave Olivia, but with growing acceptance. On her final day at the Diamond T, Thomas Garrett approached them both as they worked in the corral. "Hate to see you go, Miss Anderson," he said, leaning against the fence. "You have done fine work here. Those horses are worth twice what they were, and that bull is practically a pet now." "Thank you, Mr. Garrett. I have enjoyed my time here. I hear you are headed to Blanding next, and that Bradford here is going with you." Thomas looked at Yates with raised eyebrows. "That true?" "It is," Yates confirmed. "I hope that does not leave you short-handed." "We will manage. Sarah has been saying for months that we have more hands than we need for summer work anyway." Thomas pulled out a pipe and began filling it with tobacco. "But I have a proposition for you both, if you will hear it." Olivia and Yates exchanged glances. "We are listening," Olivia said. "I have been thinking about expanding the ranch operations. We have been buying green horses cheap and reselling them after basic training, but the quality has been inconsistent. What if we had a real training program? Bring in wild mustangs and troubled animals, gentle them properly, sell them for premium prices to ranches and the cavalry." He lit his pipe, puffing until the tobacco caught. "I would need someone to run it. Someone with your skills, Miss Anderson, and someone to assist and handle the business side, Bradford. I could offer you both employment, steady pay, and a percentage of the horse sales, plus a house on the property. Small, but private." Yates looked at Olivia, trying to read her expression. She was considering it, he could tell, weighing the offer against her independence. "I would need to honor my commitment in Blanding first," she said finally. "I gave my word." "Of course." "The offer stands whenever you are ready to return. Take your time in Blanding. See how you like traveling together, then decide. No pressure either way." After Thomas left, Olivia turned to Yates. "What do you think?" "I think it is a good offer. Stability without sacrificing what you do. But the choice is yours. I meant what I said about going wherever you go." She smiled. "Let us take it one step at a time. Blanding first, then we see how we work together, how we fit. Then we decide about the future." They left for Blanding 2 days later, riding side by side across the high desert country. The landscape was stark and beautiful, red rock formations rising like monuments, juniper and sage dotting the sandy soil. They traveled slowly, stopping often to water the horses at scattered springs, making camp under the endless sky. At night, they lay near the fire and talked for hours, sharing stories and dreams and fears. Yates told her about his childhood in Virginia, the pressure of expectations, the moment he realized he would rather disappoint his family than live a lie. Olivia spoke of her father's death, the loneliness that had followed, the determination that had carried her through. I was angry for a long time, she admitted one night, wrapped in a blanket against the desert chill. Angry that he left me, angry that the world was so unfair. He had helped so many people, so many animals, and his reward was to die before he was 50, leaving his daughter with nothing. How did you move past the anger? I did not exactly. I just learned to carry it differently, to channel it into determination instead of bitterness. She looked over at him. My father used to say that pain is inevitable, but suffering is a choice, that we decide whether hardship breaks us or makes us stronger. I chose strength even when it was hard. You are the strongest person I know, Yates said quietly. I do not feel strong most of the time. I feel terrified that I will fail, that I will not be good enough, that I will end up alone and forgotten. He reached over and took her hand. You will never be alone. Not anymore. Not as long as I have breath in my body. She squeezed his fingers. Be careful making promises like that. I might hold you to them. Please do. They reached Blanding after 4 days of travel, a small settlement even more remote than Monticello, nestled against the base of the Abajo Mountains. The ranch that had hired Olivia was a sprawling operation run by a weathered man named Carson Wright and his 3 sons. They had a string of horses bought from Ute traders that were half wild and a remuda of working horses that had developed bad habits from rough treatment. I need them fit for ranch work and sale, Carson explained, showing them the stock. And I need it done in 3 weeks. Can you manage that? Olivia assessed the horses with a practiced eye. I can manage it with help. She gestured to Yates. My associate and I work as a team. We will need suitable corrals, access to your water, and accommodation for both of us. Carson looked between them, then shrugged. Fair enough. There is a line cabin about a quarter-mile from the main house. 2 rooms, basic but sound. You can use that. The cabin was indeed basic, with a main room containing a stove and table, and a separate bedroom with a single rope bed. They stood in the doorway looking at it, the awkwardness suddenly sharp between them. I can sleep in the main room, Yates said quickly. Give you privacy. Olivia turned to him, and there was something determined in her expression. Yates, we have been dancing around this for weeks now. I care about you. I think you care about me. At some point, we need to decide what this is between us. His heart hammered. What do you want it to be? I want it to be real. I want us to be together. Truly together. No more separate beds and polite distance. She stepped closer. I know it is fast. I know we have only known each other a short time. But I have learned that life is uncertain, that nothing is guaranteed. If I have a chance at happiness, I want to take it with both hands. Yates closed the distance between them, cupping her face in his hands. I want that, too, more than I have ever wanted anything. But I need to know you are sure. I will not have you regret this. Regret me. I am sure, she said firmly. I have never been more sure of anything. He kissed her then, deep and hungry, and she responded with equal passion. They stumbled into the bedroom, hands fumbling with buttons and laces, and when they finally came together, it was with a fierce tenderness that left them both shaking. Afterward, they lay tangled in the narrow bed, skin against skin, hearts beating in rhythm. I love you, Yates whispered against her hair. I did not think I was capable of it, but I do. I love you. Olivia tilted her head back to look at him, her eyes luminous in the dim light. I love you too. From the moment you leaned against that corral fence watching me work, I think part of me knew this was inevitable. They spent the next 3 weeks working from dawn to dusk, and the partnership they had begun to build in Monticello blossomed fully. Yates proved to have real talent for the work. his patience and quiet strength complementing Olivia's intuitive understanding. Together, they transformed the string of half-wild horses into reliable mounts and rehabilitated the spoiled working horses into willing partners. Carson Wright and his sons watched with amazement as horses that had been considered dangerous became gentle under their care. "How do you do it?" asked the youngest son, a boy of 19 named Matthew, watching Olivia work with a mare that had been known to bite. "I listen to what the horse is telling me," Olivia explained, running her hands along the mare's neck. "See how her ears are forward now instead of pinned? She was afraid before, acting out of fear. Now she is curious, willing to trust. Animals are not so different from people. They just want to feel safe and understood. And you make them feel that way?" "I try. It does not always work. Some animals have been hurt too badly, scarred too deep, but most just need patience and kindness." Yates joined them, leading a gelding that had been head shy. "This one is ready to work now. Took a while to figure out he had an old injury that made the bit painful, but once we switched to a gentler bit and let him heal, he settled right down." Matthew shook his head in wonder. "My pa is going to want to hire you permanent." He was right. When the 3 weeks were up and all the horses were trained, Carson made them an offer similar to Thomas Garrett's, promising steady work and good pay if they would stay on. But Yates and Olivia had already made their decision. That night, lying in bed in the line cabin, they talked about the future. "I want to go back to Monticello," Olivia said. "Take Thomas up on his offer. Not because I am afraid of uncertainty, but because I think we could build something really good there. A real training program, a reputation for quality, maybe eventually our own place." "I want that too," Yates agreed. "But more than that, I want to make this official. I want to marry you, Olivia. Make vows in front of everyone. Pledge my life to yours." She rolled over to face him, her smile radiant even in the darkness. "Yes. 1,000 times yes." They married a week after returning to Monticello, in a simple ceremony at the town's small church. Sarah Garrett stood up for Olivia, and Thomas himself walked her down the aisle in lieu of a father. Yates wore his best clothes and felt his throat tighten as Olivia appeared in a dress of cream-colored lace, wildflowers woven into her hair. When they exchanged vows, his voice shook with emotion, and when the minister pronounced them husband and wife, he kissed her with all the love and gratitude bursting in his chest. The house Thomas provided was indeed small, just 3 rooms and a porch, but it was theirs. They filled it with simple furniture and made it a home, hanging curtains Olivia sewed and building bookshelves for the volumes Yates began ordering from back east. The training program flourished under their management, word spreading about the couple who could gentle the wildest horses, rehabilitate the most troubled animals. Ranchers came from across southern Utah and even northern Arizona, bringing difficult stock and paying premium prices for the results. In the evenings, they would sit on their porch and watch the sun set over the red rocks, talking about their days and their dreams. Yates discovered a talent for the business side of the operation, keeping careful records and negotiating sales, while Olivia's reputation grew with each successful training. They were partners in every sense, their strengths complementing each other perfectly. "Do you ever miss it?" Olivia asked one night. "Virginia, your family? That life?" Yates considered. "I miss my mother. I wish she could meet you, see that I am happy. But the life itself? No. This is where I belong, who I was meant to be." He pulled her closer. "Though I suppose I should write to her. Let her know I am alive and well, that I have found my place." "You should," Olivia agreed. "Parents deserve to know their children are safe, even if they have chosen a different path." So Yates wrote to his mother, a long letter explaining his choices and his happiness, describing his wife and their work and the life they were building. 2 months later, a reply came. His mother's careful script telling him that while his father was still angry, she was simply grateful he was well. She sent her blessing on his marriage and a request for details about Olivia. Thus began a correspondence that would continue for years, bridging the distance between his old life and his new. The first year of their marriage passed in a blur of work and love and laughter. Olivia taught Yates everything her father had taught her, and he proved an able student, developing his own style and techniques. They traveled together sometimes, taking on special jobs at distant ranches, but always returned to Monticello and the home they were building. The restlessness that had plagued Yates for so long had finally settled, replaced by a contentment he had never imagined possible. In the spring of their second year together, Olivia realized she was pregnant. She told Yates one evening after supper, taking his hand and placing it on her still flat stomach, "There is a life growing here. Our child." The joy that filled him was almost painful in its intensity. "Are you certain?" "As certain as I can be. I have missed my courses, and I feel different. Tired, but also more alive somehow." She looked up at him with shining eyes. "Are you happy?" "Happy does not begin to cover it," he said, sweeping her into his arms and spinning her around. "We are going to be parents. You are going to be a mother. And you are going to be a father. We will teach our child everything we know, raise them to be strong and kind and true." They began preparing immediately, Yates building a cradle from smooth pine and Olivia sewing tiny clothes. Sarah Garrett and the other ranch wives rallied around, offering advice and assistance and sharing the knowing smiles of women who had walked this path before. The pregnancy progressed smoothly, Olivia continuing to work with the horses through her first months until the bulge of her belly made it impractical. Then she shifted to consultation and instruction, directing while Yates and the ranch hands did the physical work. On a cold December night, as snow began to fall across the high desert, their son was born. The labor was long and difficult, and Yates paced outside the bedroom where Sarah and the midwife attended Olivia, feeling more helpless than he ever had in his life. But when he finally heard the sharp cry of a newborn and was called inside, all the fear evaporated. Olivia lay exhausted against the pillows, her hair damp with sweat, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in soft blankets. "Meet your son," she said, her voice hoarse but triumphant. Yates approached slowly, almost afraid to believe this was real. The baby was red-faced and wrinkled, with a shock of dark hair and tiny fists waving in the air. When Yates touched one of those fists, the fingers immediately wrapped around his own, gripping with surprising strength. "He is perfect," Yates whispered. "Absolutely perfect." They named him James after Olivia's father, giving him the middle name Thomas in honor of the man who had given them their start. Little James proved to be a healthy, hungry baby who nursed vigorously and slept in fits and starts. Those first months were exhausting, a blur of feedings and diaper changes and sleepless nights. But they were also filled with wonder, watching this tiny person grow and change day by day, discovering his personality and quirks. "He has your determination," Yates observed one afternoon, watching 6-month-old James stubbornly work to roll from back to stomach, refusing to give up despite repeated failures. "And your stubbornness," Olivia countered with a laugh. "That is the same look you get when a horse is not responding the way you expect." As James grew, they discovered he had inherited both his parents' affinity for animals. He was barely walking when he began toddling after the ranch dogs, and by age 2, he could sit still for long periods watching the horses in the corrals, his small face intent with concentration. Olivia would take him with her when she worked, letting him observe from safe distances, and Yates would hold him in the saddle when checking fence lines, pointing out wildlife and plants, and teaching him the names of things. "He is going to be better than both of us," Olivia predicted one day, watching 3-year-old James successfully coax a nervous colt to take an apple from his hand. "He is going to be whoever he chooses to be," Yates said, "and we will support him in that, whatever it is." But it was clear that James loved the work as much as his parents did. By age 5, he was helping with simple chores, and by 7, he was training his first horse under careful supervision. He had Olivia's intuitive understanding and Yates's patience, combined with a fearlessness that sometimes terrified his parents. More than once, Yates had to physically restrain himself from intervening as James worked with an unpredictable animal, reminding himself that the boy needed to learn to develop his own skills and confidence. When James was 8, Olivia discovered she was pregnant again. This pregnancy was harder than the first, leaving her sick and exhausted for months. Yates took over most of the training work while Sarah and the other women helped care for James. But Olivia refused to stay completely idle, consulting on difficult cases and planning the expansion of their operation. Thomas had offered them a partnership in the ranch, recognizing how much value they brought, and they were now co-owners of the training program with plans to eventually buy their own land and establish an independent operation. Their daughter was born on a blazing July afternoon, arriving quickly and with less drama than James had. They named her Margaret, after Yates's mother, who had passed away the previous winter without ever meeting her grandchildren. This time, Yates was present for the birth, holding Olivia's hand and witnessing the moment his daughter entered the world. Margaret proved to be different from her brother in temperament, quieter and more cautious, but no less determined. Where James was bold, she was thoughtful, watching and learning before attempting anything new. As she grew, it became clear she had inherited her grandfather's healing touch. She would find injured birds and nurse them back to health, befriend sick calves, and spend hours sitting with animals in distress, somehow calming them with her presence alone. She has the gift even more strongly than I did, Olivia said with wonder, watching 5-year-old Margaret sit perfectly still beside a mare about to foal, the horse clearly taking comfort from the child's calm presence. Your father would be so proud, Yates said, his arm around his wife's shoulders, to see his legacy continuing through his grandchildren. The years continued to roll past, marked by the changing seasons and the growth of their children and their business. James grew into a capable young man, tall and strong like his father, with his mother's auburn hair and gift for understanding animals. At 16, he was training horses independently, earning his own reputation. Margaret, at 13, was developing her own specialty in animal healing, learning from the veterinarian who had set up practice in Monticello and combining that knowledge with her natural empathy. Yates and Olivia, now in their 40s, had built something lasting. The training program was renowned across the region, and they had finally purchased their own land, a beautiful spread of several hundred acres where they were establishing not just a training facility, but a sanctuary for troubled and abused animals. Word had spread of Olivia's methods, and people came from increasing distances to learn, to watch, to bring animals they thought were beyond hope. One evening, as they sat on the porch of the larger house they had built on their new property, watching the sun paint the rocks gold and crimson, Yates took Olivia's hand. Her hair was streaked with gray now, her face lined by years of sun and wind and smiles, but to him she was as beautiful as the day he first saw her in that corral. "Do you remember when I asked if you could gentle me?" he said quietly. She laughed. "You never asked that. You asked if I thought you could be settled. Same question, really." "I suppose it is." She leaned against his shoulder. "And what is the answer? Do you feel gentled?" "Settled." Yates thought about the restless young man he had been, running from expectations and himself, wild in all the wrong ways. Then he thought about the life they had built, the family they had raised, the work that gave him purpose and satisfaction. "I feel like I finally understand what freedom really means, not running away from things, but choosing what to run toward, not avoiding commitment, but finding commitments worth keeping." "That is a yes, then?" "That is a yes. You gentled me, Olivia. You showed me that strength could be soft, that wildness could be channeled instead of broken, that I could be fully myself and still belong to something bigger." He lifted her hand to his lips. You saved me in every way a person can be saved. You saved me too, she said. I was so alone before you, so tired of fighting the world by myself. You gave me partnership and love and a family. You gave me a home. They sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell and the stars emerged, the same stars that had witnessed their first kiss years ago. Inside the house, they could hear James playing his guitar and Margaret singing along, their voices harmonizing sweetly. From the corrals came the soft sounds of horses settling for the night, and in the distance a coyote called to its mate. We should probably write to your mother's sister, Olivia said eventually. Let her know Margaret wants to visit Virginia next summer. Meet that side of the family. She will love that, and it will be good for Margaret to see where I came from. Understand that part of her heritage. James wants to go to Denver in the fall, study with that trainer who specializes in cavalry horses. He should go. It will be good experience, and he needs to spread his wings a bit. They are growing up so fast. Soon they will have their own lives, their own families. Yates heard the melancholy in her voice and squeezed her hand. They will, but they will always come back here, to this place we built together, and we will still have each other, just like we started. Promise? I promise, until my last breath and beyond. She smiled and kissed him, and for a moment, they were young again, full of hope and possibility, standing on the edge of their great adventure. Except now they had the wisdom to know how precious this was, how rare and valuable true partnership, true love could be. The years continued to pass, bringing new challenges and joys. James did go to Denver and returned even more skilled, eventually marrying the daughter of a neighboring rancher and bringing her into the family business. Margaret studied veterinary medicine, becoming one of the first women in the territory to do so, then returned to establish her own practice alongside the family training operation. She married later to a kind teacher who had moved to Monticello from back east, and they built a house on the family property. Yates and Olivia became grandparents, watching with joy as James and his wife welcomed 3 children, and Margaret and her husband had 2. The property rang with the laughter of grandchildren, the sounds of horses and cattle, the barking of dogs, and the various other animals that always seemed to find their way to the sanctuary. The training facility grew famous, people traveling from across the West to learn the Bradford Anderson method, as it came to be known. On their 30th wedding anniversary, Yates arranged a surprise for Olivia. He had been corresponding with a historian in Virginia who specialized in veterinary medicine, and together they had compiled a written history of Olivia's father's work, including testimonials from people he had helped and documentation of his innovative techniques. Yates had it all bound in a beautiful leather volume and presented it to Olivia at a celebration attended by their entire extended family and half the town. She wept when she saw it, holding the book like the treasure it was. How did you do this? I wrote to everyone you ever mentioned, tracked down people through county records, spent 2 years gathering everything I could find. Your father deserves to be remembered, and our children and grandchildren deserve to know the man whose legacy they carry. Olivia could not speak, could only hold him close while happy tears streamed down her face. Later, she would read the book, cover to cover, discovering things about her father she had never known, seeing the full scope of his impact on the world. It was a gift beyond measure, and it deepened her love for Yates even further, if that were possible. They grew old together, their bodies slowing but their spirits remaining strong. Yates developed arthritis in his hands, making some of the physical work difficult, but he could still consult and teach. Olivia's eyesight faded, but her understanding of animals remained as sharp as ever, and young trainers would bring their difficult cases to her for advice. They remained active in the business, watching with pride as James took over day-to-day operations, and Margaret expanded the sanctuary to include rehabilitation for wild animals injured by development and hunting. On a spring morning in 1932, when Yates was 71 and Olivia 68, they sat on their porch, watching their youngest grandson attempt to train his first calf. The boy was 9, full of enthusiasm and natural talent, and the calf was responding beautifully to his gentle approach. He has the gift, Olivia said contentedly. 4 generations now. Your father's legacy, Yates agreed, and yours. You took what he taught you and built an empire of gentleness in a harsh world. We built it, she corrected. You were essential to all of this, Yates. Never doubt that. He looked at her, this woman who had changed his entire life, who had shown him what he was capable of becoming. Her hair was white now, her face deeply lined, her hands gnarled with age, and she was still the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. I love you, he said, as he had said countless times over the decades. From the moment I saw you in that corral, I was yours, and I love you, my wild cowboy who let himself be gentled. She took his hand, their fingers intertwining automatically, perfectly, as they had for 45 years. Whatever comes next, wherever we go from here, we go together. Together, he agreed. Always together. They sat in the morning sun, watching their grandson work, hearing the sounds of their family and their life all around them. The ranch stretched out before them, red rocks rising in the distance, horses grazing peacefully in the pastures. This was what they had built, not just a business or a property, but a legacy of gentleness, of understanding, of choosing connection over isolation, trust over fear. Yates had come to Utah, a lost young man, running from a future that felt like a cage. He had found Olivia, and through her, he had found himself. She had gentled him not by breaking his spirit, but by showing him how to channel his wildness into something productive and beautiful. She had taught him that strength and softness could coexist, that being vulnerable did not mean being weak, that building a life with someone did not mean losing yourself. In return, he had given her partnership and support, had believed in her when others thought her strange, had helped her build something even bigger than her father's legacy. Together, they had created a family, a business, a way of being in the world that proved gentleness could be powerful, that patience could triumph over force, that love was the ultimate civilizing force. Their story was not dramatic in the way of dime novels, with shootouts and desperados and dramatic rescues. It was the quieter story of 2 lost souls finding each other and building something lasting, of a woman who could gentle wild animals and a man who needed gentling, of understanding that being wild did not mean being untamable, it meant being authentic, true to yourself, fully alive. As the sun climbed higher and the day warmed, family members began emerging from various houses and buildings, starting the day's work. Grandchildren called greetings, horses whinnied for breakfast, dogs barked joyfully. The ranch was waking up, another day beginning in the life they had built. Olivia stood, stretching her stiff back, and Yates rose with her. They moved slowly now, but they moved together, heading inside to start their own morning routine. Coffee to brew, breakfast to make, plans to discuss with James about a new group of horses arriving next week. The work never truly ended, but they would not have it any other way. Do you ever wish things had turned out differently? Olivia asked as they moved through their comfortable kitchen, the question coming from nowhere. If you had stayed in Virginia, became a lawyer like your father wanted, do you think you would have been happy? Yates stopped and turned to her, cupping her weathered face in his equally weathered hands. I would have been miserable, half alive at best. You gave me a real life, Olivia. Not the one I was supposed to have, but the one I was meant for. Every moment, every choice, every challenge was worth it because they led me to you and this. He gestured around them, encompassing the house, the ranch, the life they had built. I have no regrets. None at all. She smiled, her eyes still as warm and bright as they had been decades ago. Neither do I. We have been blessed, you and I. Not because everything was easy, but because we faced it together. They kissed, a brief, sweet touch of lips, then turned to face the day. Outside, their grandson finally succeeded in getting a halter on the calf, and his whoop of triumph made them both laugh. Life continued, generation flowing into generation, the methods and philosophy they had developed spreading outward through their children and students, changing how people in this part of the world thought about animals and training. That evening, after a full day of work and family and the beautiful chaos of their life, Yates and Olivia returned to their porch to watch another sunset. It was their ritual, had been for decades, this quiet time together as day turned to night. James and his wife were handling dinner, and the sounds of cooking and conversation drifted from the main house where the family gathered most evenings. 45 years, Olivia mused, her head on Yates's shoulder. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, and sometimes like we have always been together. Both are true, I think. Yates kissed her hair. Time is strange that way. Do you remember what you said the night you proposed? About being wild? I remember everything about that night. You were right, you know. Being wild is not about running. It is about authenticity, about being true to yourself even when the world wants you to be something else. She lifted her head to look at him. We stayed wild, you and I, just in a different way than anyone expected. The best way, he agreed. Together. The sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple and red, the colors reflected in the windows of their home and the homes of their children. Stars began to emerge, constant and eternal, the same stars that had watched over their first dance, their first kiss, their wedding day, the births of their children and grandchildren. Yates felt a profound sense of completeness, of a life well lived and a story well told. He had been lost once, wild in all the wrong ways, and this remarkable woman had gentled him, had shown him how to be both fully himself and fully connected to others. She had not tamed him or broken him, but had helped him become the best version of himself. And he hoped, believed, that he had done the same for her. I love you, Olivia Bradford, he said into the gathering darkness, more than I have words to express. I love you, Yates Bradford, more than all the stars in the sky. They sat together as night fell completely, holding hands and watching the world settle around them. Inside, their family laughed and talked, their legacy continuing through children and grandchildren who carried forward the philosophy of gentleness and understanding. The horses in the corrals dozed peacefully, the cattle bedded down in the pastures, and somewhere in the sanctuary, a rehabilitated hawk stretched its wings, preparing for release back into the wild. This was what they had built, what their love had created. Not just a family or a business, but a way of being in the world that honored the wild things while bringing them into partnership with humans. A method that proved force was not strength, that patience could accomplish more than violence, that understanding could bridge the gap between different species and different souls. Years would continue to pass, their children and grandchildren carrying on the work, expanding the sanctuary, refining the training methods, spreading the philosophy further. And long after Yates and Olivia themselves were gone, returned to the red earth they had loved so well, their legacy would remain. In the horses trained with patience instead of broken with force. In the wild animals, nursed back to health and returned to freedom. In the generations of trainers who learned that gentleness was not weakness, but the highest form of strength. But that was all future, still to come. For now, in this perfect moment, Yates and Olivia sat together on their porch, two souls who had found each other against all odds and built a life of meaning and purpose and love. The wild cowboy and the woman who gentled him, the woman who could calm any animal, and the man who proved that sometimes being gentled was the bravest thing a wild heart could do. The moon rose over the red rocks, silver and serene, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote sang its lonely song. Yates squeezed Olivia's hand, and she squeezed back, and no words were needed. They had said everything that mattered over 45 years of shared life, of partnership and love and unwavering commitment. This was their happily ever after, not a fairy tale ending, but a real one, built on hard work and mutual respect and the deep understanding that comes from truly seeing and accepting another person. They had found each other in the wild spaces of Utah Territory, two lost souls seeking something they could not name. And they had built a home, a family, a legacy that would outlast them both. As they finally rose to go inside, to join their family for dinner and conversation, and the warm chaos of a house full of love, Yates paused at the door. He looked back at the corrals where he had first seen Olivia work her magic on a wild horse, where he had first felt that shift in his chest that told him his life was about to change forever. "Thank you," he said quietly, and Olivia knew he was not just thanking her, but the universe itself, fate or luck or God or whatever force had brought them together. "Thank you," she echoed. And then they went inside together, into the light and warmth and love, where their family waited and their story continued, one perfect day at a time, one gentle touch at a time, one moment of connection and understanding at a time, proving that the wildest hearts, when gentled with love instead of broken with force, could build the most beautiful lives of all.